started. Just to answer a couple of questions for you guys. Yes, we will be recording this session today, so if you have to leave early or you have someone from your team that's coming in late, we are going to record it and we'll post it on the website probably sometime next week. We'll send out an email blast to everyone that's signed up so that you get a link to that video when it becomes available. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Today we're going to be discussing some of the security features and settings in QuoteWerks. We get a lot of questions about the settings that people should use or the ones that are available. So we're going to go through kind of the most common ones, how to set these, and where you can even find them in the help file if you ever have questions about what's available and how you can make these changes in your system. As we go through, if you guys do have questions, feel free to post them in the questions chat window. You'll actually see when there is a chat window that says questions. Go ahead and post it there. If I don't answer your question immediately, I will circle back at the end of the training and come back and make sure I answer everyone's questions before we end. So you know, if I don't get to your question immediately, just bear with me. I will circle back to it at the end. So today we're going to do a very short PowerPoint presentation, just a few slides to go over some of the kind of like the outline for today. We're going to go over our workflow diagram for QuoteWerks. It's just something we like to always display and demonstrate for you guys so you get kind of an idea of how most users are using QuoteWerks. And then we'll show you some of the additional resources that are available on the website as well. So the security and access rights are really divided into 4 major sections in the software, or 4 categories, if you will. The first one's going to be access rights. These are general security settings for a user in the software. So they can be assigned to a user or a group. It's basically either restricting or granting access to a particular feature or kind of like item in QuoteWerks. So if you want a user to be able to do something or you want to restrict a user from doing something, typically that's going to be an access right under the access tab. We also have document rights. This is where you set who has access to other users' documents. So you can actually choose this user has access to another user's documents, but they can only view them, or they can view and modify. They can view, modify, and delete, or they can prepare documents for you. So you can really kind of set who has access to which documents. You can also set up document approvals. We actually have a complete other video on that, but we'll kind of touch on it today, where you can actually set up management approvals, where management can actually set up specific approval settings in QuoteWerks that if a document doesn't meet this certain criteria, it needs to be approved by management before it can be sent out to a customer. We then also have our menu access rights. This is where you can actually hide individual menu options from other users in QuoteWerks. Very nice feature for any new users in QuoteWerks, because there's a lot of features, there's a lot of stuff in QuoteWerks, but if you look at the very top of your software, there's all these menus that have obviously different selections available, and with the menu access you can actually remove some of those to kind of make it a little simpler for any new users, or just remove things that you don't want other users getting into, you know, such as like the license manager. You're not going to want a sales rep in the license manager, that kind of thing. And then the last one we're going to talk about today are going to be the product database rights. This is where you can actually assign specific security settings to your product databases in QuoteWerks. So you can actually assign who has access to view a specific database, who has access to modify, who has access to delete databases, or the items in the database themselves. So I'll show you how to do all that today, and like I said, then we'll spend the last few minutes of the session answering any questions that I don't get to during the webinar here. So typically the QuoteWerks workflow is going to be very straightforward. We're going to create, deliver, purchase, and fulfill through the document. So the first one's always going to be select a contact. That's how we always want to start a document. Select the contact, select your products and services, deliver the quote to the customer. If you're using QuoteValley, you can do it electronically. If you're not using QuoteValley, you can send the email PDF document. Once the customer accepts and or makes payment, you can then move forward to updating the opportunity in your CRM or PSA. So if you're integrating with one of the CRMs or PSAs that we work with, this is at the point where we're converting that quote to an order, and we're going to update that CRM or PSA opportunity as closed or as won in that system. From there, you can then go to the ordering process, where we can actually resource the product from a different vendor if pricing has changed, or we can at least just check stock and things of that nature. We can then place the order if you're using one of the supported distributors. Otherwise, you can always send a purchase order from QuoteWerks. And then we can actually create the purchase order itself in QuickBooks, Sage 50, Autotask, and ConnectWise. So if you're using any of those systems, we can actually create the PO from there in QuoteWerks. And then we'll also create that PO in QuoteWerks so you can track the order to delivery and fulfillment. So you can add like serial numbers and tracking numbers and all that stuff if you're not using any of the supported vendors for purchasing. We have a lot of resources on the website, so it's a great place to go if you do have questions. We do have specific feature videos, so any of the major features in QuoteWerks, we do have videos. A lot of them are less than 10 minutes because it's showing a specific feature, so it's always a great place to go for any questions. We do have our overview videos that are a little more in depth, usually anywhere between 30 minutes and an hour, where they kind of show how to use a feature in the whole process of creating a quote. And then we also have these webinar and demonstration videos. Those are typically around an hour, and they can even be longer if it's some type of training video. So we have a lot of videos on the website that are available for you for free that you can always go view if you have questions about the software. The online help file, this is going to have basically everything that's in the software. It's going to be our help manual. This is available in every user's QuoteWerks installation. Under the help file, or under the help menu rather, you can click QuoteWerks help and that'll load up the help file. I'll also show you how to find it on the website as well if you don't have QuoteWerks yet, if you're just evaluating. It's searchable by keyword and there is an index, so it makes finding specific features or adding questions or looking up questions very, very easy in the software. We go to a lot of events, so if you're going to any ASCII events or any other events that we plan to be at, definitely stop by the booth. We're also on social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and we do have QuoteWerks forums. So that's a great place to connect with us or ask questions. If you don't like the traditional methods of email and phone call, we're always available there that way as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I wanted to show you is the help file. So you can get to the help file again by in your QuoteWerks installation if you click on help, QuoteWerks help, and that'll bring up your help file. If you don't have QuoteWerks installed yet, if you're just evaluating, you can also access it by going to support and then just clicking on the support icon, and then you'll see there's different support options, and the first one you're going to see is this help system, and then if you click on help documentation, that'll open up the help file for you. So a very easy way to get to the help file if you don't have QuoteWerks installed yet. If you do, you can get there right from your help menu, and that'll have the latest version of the help file available. All right, so typically when we start making changes to security settings or access rights in QuoteWerks, the first thing you need to do is you need to be logged in as an administrator, either as the administrator in QuoteWerks or some user with master rights, because you're going to need to be able to make changes to other users' security settings. So I'm logged in as myself, but I do have master rights, which means I'm going to be able to make these changes to any users. So to access the security settings, we're going to click on Utilities, and then you're going to scroll all the way down to User Maintenance. Once you click on User Maintenance, this is going to display a list of all the QuoteWerks users you've set up in QuoteWerks. So if you have 2, if you have 100, they're all going to be displayed here, and this is where you can start making these modifications. Now the first thing I want to point out is going to be your Groups tab. If you click on the Groups tab, you'll actually see a list of all the groups that you've set up in QuoteWerks. Groups are extremely useful if you are using, if you have any users, maybe you have an inside sales team or an outside sales team, or maybe just the sales team in general, where a lot of the users are going to have the same security settings. You can assign them to the same group, and that will allow you to assign security settings to a group instead of having to edit every individual user. And I'll just go over how to do that exactly, but that's where the groups can be very, very handy. So if you do have groups in your QuoteWerks setup or you haven't used groups yet, this is a good time to do that. Clicking on the Groups tab is where you create or edit the groups, create or rename the groups, not where you actually add users to it. That's going to be done on another screen, which I'll show you in a second. So click on the Groups tab. This will let you create a new group, and this will let you rename a current existing group. When you highlight a group, it'll actually show you your group members down here at the bottom. So if you're not sure if the right users are in a specific group, you can always highlight the group and you can see which users are in that specific group. So we're going to go ahead and edit my user here. I'm going to go ahead and make some changes in here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit. And this is a message just basically saying that, hey, since I'm logged in as Brandon, it's not going to let me change my password so I don't get myself locked out of QuoteWerks. So the first tab you'll see under these user properties is going to be the group membership. This is where you assign a specific user to that specific group or groups that are available. So you'll see here, these are the 3 groups that are available, and I'm already part of inside sales, so that's what I want to be in. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that one the same. But if I wanted to also include myself in outside sales or maybe switch it from inside to outside sales, I could make that change. So the first tab, or the first menu option that we're going to discuss is going to be the Menus tab. This is where you set which users have access to specific menu options. So like I talked about at the beginning, we have quite a few different menu options up at the top here, but the menu options can be kind of overwhelming for a lot of users, and there's a lot of menu options you don't want your users to have option or to view. So this is where you can make those changes. So if you click on your File menu here, if you click on the little plus sign, this will show you every menu option that's under the File menu. And there's a checkbox next to all those actions. So if you want to remove an action, you can. For instance, maybe you don't want your user to have the ability to approve a quote. You know, they're not going to be in management. They're not going to need this functionality. You can go ahead and remove that functionality. Maybe you don't want them to be able to convert it to an invoice. You can remove that. You can see how easy it is to simply remove or add these different menu options, and you can just go through each menu option. So we can move on to edit, view, products, all of those, you can do that. A couple of the ones that I would recommend for your users, for just your base users that are not setting up QuoteWerks, typically is going to be products. You're going to want to remove the setup product sources and import wizard. This will keep the users from being able to get to the setup product sources screen, so they don't accidentally remove a product database if you don't set those security settings. They're not importing product sources, you know, every time they want to pull in a new product list, things like that. So those are two options that you might want to set for your typical users where they're just using the software. They don't have any maintenance involved in keeping track of products or anything like that under that products menu. So that's two that you can look at removing for your users. Your tools menu, there's a lot of options in here. This is going to kind of depend on your security settings with each user, but one of the major ones is going to be your options menu. The options menu is something that is site driven. So any changes that are made in the options menu is actually going to affect everyone that logs into that QuoteWerks installation. So again, that may be another option that you want to remove from your different users menus, so that only your master users or your admin users in QuoteWerks have the option to change any of the site options in QuoteWerks. All right, and then contacts, set up contact manager. You probably don't want your users changing and set up the contact manager. So again, that might be one that you want to look at hiding as well. And then reports. If you don't want your users to have access to the management reports, you can actually just uncheck that entire reports section. You don't have to do it just for the management. You can see it actually going to uncheck both of them when you do that. And then the utilities menu. The utilities menu for most users is something they're not going to use. So you may want to hide just the entire utilities menu for your users. That's typically more on the management side or the admin side of QuoteWerks. The only reason you might want to leave it there is if you have remote users who need to sync, or if someone if they're updating the exchange rates, that kind of thing. But for the most part, most of these options are not going to be something that typical user uses. I would definitely recommend hiding the user maintenance and the license manager fields from your users so they don't accidentally pull out a license key or they don't accidentally change someone's password in the security settings, that kind of thing. Just kind of makes it a little easier. You don't have to worry about them making those types of adjustments. So those are just a few options that you can change. The window and the help are typically something you would want them to have access to. So we would typically leave those alone. But again, you can go through these and decide what's going to be important for you. And Gene, I see your question about setting a product as discontinued. There's actually a way you can set a database as discontinued, which we'll get to here, but I'll circle back to your question here at the end. All right, so now we're going to move on to the Access tab. So the Access tab has, as you can see, a ton of different features and restrictions, or can actually apply some new features for a user. Over here on the right is what we call the Spotlight search. This is a way that you can search for a specific setting, kind of like by keyword. And what it'll do is actually highlight a specific security setting in QuoteWerks for you based on what you type in. So for instance, if I type in this case, we'll do can see, all one word, you can see it unhighlights or basically grays out any of the security settings that don't start with the word can see. So actually I have to scroll down all the way to the bottom, and then you'll see it's bolded. Any of my security settings that start with Ken C, will show that in here. So that's a good way to kind of narrow down your search for specific security settings if you want to see, if you want to see specific words or something that has, in this case, cost. I want to see all the security settings associated with cost. You can type that in here, and you'll see it'll pick up on the word cost in your different security settings. So it's a very easy way to kind of navigate your security settings. I see someone is asking if you can belong to more than one group. Yes, you can. And if so, is there a hierarchy for security? No, the groups are basically independent groups, so one group doesn't trump another essentially. However, you can assign someone to a group, and then you could assign them specific security settings. So maybe like you assign all the sales reps and the sales manager to the same group, but then you go into the sales manager's user settings and you assign them some additional security settings. Maybe they have access to everyone's documents instead of just their own. So there's things you can do to be able to do that. All right, so from here, again, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. We have a list of all the security settings in the help file. So if you go to QuoteWerks, or if you go into help and then QuoteWerks help, that will actually open up the help file, and you can see a list of all the security settings and their definitions. Basically, what do they do? There's a couple in here I want to highlight. A lot of users always ask about not being able to, they don't want their users to create, modify, and delete their products in their databases. They're setting up all these product sources, and they take a lot of time to get them the exact way they want them, and they don't want the users to go in there and be able to modify them. They just want them to be able to select them. So you can see here, there's actually up at the top, there's three of them right next to each other. The cannot create products, cannot modify products, and cannot delete products. This would make my user not able to make those types of changes with these security settings set. So that's just some of the common ones that are set here. Cannot delete documents is a very big one. It's actually one of the reasons up at the top is that a lot of times if we don't want users deleting quotes, orders, invoices, anything, just want them to be able to make changes to the documents, convert them to loss, convert them to one, that kind of thing. Don't want them to actually delete any of the documents in the software. So always a good one to have in there as well. Cannot view others' documents. If you don't want a user to be able to view another user's documents, you can set that setting here as well. If you do have master rights, your master rights settings are going to override most of these. So if you are set as a master rights user, that means that you will have the ability to see other users' documents even if these security settings are set, because essentially master rights means you're an admin user, so it doesn't really matter what your security settings are. So one thing I do want to show you here, because this is going to affect a lot of you, is if you type CAN-C in the Spotlight search here, this is going to bring you down to some date ranges. If any of you are using the QuoteWerks dashboard or QuoteValet, you may see that a lot of times when you look things up in the dashboard or in QuoteValet, such as something like QuoteValet Web, your date ranges are limited. This is where you can make those changes. So if you want to be able to see a date range of this week, this month, last month, 2 months, last quarter, this year, last year, you can see all the options here. You need to make sure that you actually set these. By default, every time you create a new user in QuoteWerks, these settings are not set. Also, if you are a master rights user, you still need to go ahead and set these because this is basically turning them on. By default, these settings are always turned off, I think except for today and yesterday and this week. I think those are the 3 default ones, if I'm not mistaken. So if you're using the QuoteWerks dashboard or QuoteValet, and you want to be able to use QuoteValet Web to get more reporting information and you want to see different date ranges, this is where you make that setting. These settings are used for both. So if you're using the QuoteValet dashboard and QuoteValet Web or just one or the other, it doesn't matter, it's using the same setting here. So this is where you can make those changes. Like I said, by default, these are unchecked. So under your Access tab, you can go through and decide which date ranges you do want to be able to see. There's also a couple more for QuoteValet Web specific in here. You can actually see down near the bottom it says cannot use QuoteValet Web. A lot of times that is defaulted as well. So if you are using QuoteValet and you want your users to be able to have access to QuoteValet Web, you'll need to grant them access through here as well. So just a couple things to keep in mind for any new users, or if you're new to using the dashboard or QuoteValet Web, there's some settings here you'll want to set. There's also some non-master rights users options. This is extremely useful if you have someone in the company who you don't want to give master rights to, but you need them to be able to make some changes to other users. We talked about like having a sales manager where maybe they have access to the other users' quotes and they need to be able to modify their settings here and there. You can actually apply a non-master rights user can modify users, and this will let them make changes to the user's security settings or access rights. Maybe they need to provide document assistance and they need to be able to work or view another user's documents. They'd be able to make those adjustments. Same thing for the non-master rights user can administer any user's documents. They can actually choose who has access to another user's documents. Can delete purchase orders, can administer system email templates. That's a big one, so that they can actually make changes to the email templates, something that a sales manager would probably do. So you have those options here, and then can delete quote valet quotes and can dismiss others' quote valet notifications. So there's a couple settings in there for any user that is just kind of like a higher level than just your typical QuoteWerks user. They need to be able to do some basic management of the software, usually on the sales side of things. That's where they can make these changes. Got a couple questions about asking if you want to see this webinar at a later time. Yeah, we are recording this, so we will post this on the website and we'll send out an email blast afterwards as well. All right, so again, all these access rights are in the help file and they're all defined so you can see a specific one, but like I said, it's really the easiest if you're looking to restrict or add a feature or security setting for a user. Easiest way just kind of do it by keyword. So if you want to see, maybe you want to limit the unit price for someone where they can't manually modify the unit price or something like that, you can actually change that here. So you can use a spotlight search to kind of search by keyword, and it'll highlight in bold that exact security setting for you. The Documents tab is the next tab. So this is kind of the next section of the security settings. This is who has access to your documents in QuoteWerks. So when you're editing a user, right now I'm editing Brandon's, I'm choosing who can view, modify, delete, and prepare documents for this user. So I can choose if it's a specific group or a specific user. If they work together, if they're collaborative, and they need access to another user's quotes, you're typically going to want to have them be able to view and modify. For some companies, they don't want them, you can only view your documents, you can only modify your documents, and that's it. So you can set those settings here. To change the setting, simply click on Change, and it'll show you a list of your different users and groups. This is, again, where having your users in groups is very effective, because instead of having to say, okay, I want to assign Brandon, Jen, and John all to the same setting here, since they're all in the same group, I can just choose to apply inside sales, and then all my inside sales reps, anyone that's in that group, would have access to view my documents. Same thing with modifying, deleting, or preparing. The preparing is a fairly new feature. It's been out for a while, but if you're not familiar with it, what the preparing feature allows you to do is actually create quotes on someone's behalf. So if someone's out of the office on vacation or something like that, this would allow you to create a quote in QuoteWerks and then set the sales rep for that rep that's out of the office. That's done on the Sale Info tab, but you need to basically allow users to prepare documents on their behalf in this Documents tab setting here. You'll also see we have a document approval setting. There's actually a whole video on this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but this is where you can actually set up those management approvals that we talked about, where if you have a specific either dollar value or margin percentage that each document needs to match or meet before it can be sent to a customer, this is where you'll set that up. There's different restrictions and different amounts that are available, and you can go in and set it on a per user basis, or you can see you can actually set up a different profile. Like I said, there's a complete video, I think it's about 20-25 minutes long, that goes over how to set up the document approvals and how to use those. So I'd recommend watching that if you're unfamiliar with this, or also check out the help file. But it's just important to note that that's part of kind of like the security settings. Is this is where you're going to set up those document approvals under this Documents tab under your user. And then the Sales tab, this is if you're going to be using the quotas. You can actually set that here. We can also set our commissions on this rate on this tab as well. And then the last tab I wanted to mention is going to be the Apply To tab. So this is a fairly new feature. I think this came out in version 5.0, so just a little less than a year ago. But the Apply To feature will allow you to apply security changes or anything that's been changed on this on these tabs to multiple users. So I made all these changes to my user, and now I want to apply it. So I made changes to the Menus tab, the Access tab, and the Document View and Modify and Delete tab. So I want to now share these settings with other users because they're all in the same group. We would make our selections and then click Select User. And then you can actually choose who you want to apply these settings to. So you can apply it to a specific group, again, which is really nice having these group settings. So if you're in a bigger organization where you have these different groups, or if you have assigned your users to a group, this is a way where you can change a specific security setting for one user, and then you can just apply it to all the users that fit that same criteria by choosing these groups. So when you select that group, you can simply hit OK, and then this is going to basically just confirm that, hey, this is what you've selected, and this cannot be undone. Are you sure you want to proceed? And we can go ahead and do yes, and then yes. And then you can see it's been copied to those two users. So it'll basically just kind of make sure that you do want to select it for all those users, and then it'll confirm and go across it. So you can make those changes as much as needed. So it's kind of like a shortcut when you need to update a user or multiple users with maybe a change. Maybe you've changed your processes, giving them more access, or maybe you're taking away access, and you want to apply those changes to all your users. This is how you can do it now using that Apply To tab. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to touch on here before we start taking questions is going to be the product sources and taking those changes and restricting the product sources. So the first thing you'll have to do if you want to restrict who has access to a specific product source, maybe you sell two different product lines and you want to hide one product database from another set of reps, the first thing you'll need to do is enable the product security settings. To do that, you're going to click on Tools, Options, and then we're going to click on our Security tab. And then there's going to be a checkbox that says Enable Individual Product Data Source Level Security. So you need to make sure this box is checked first in order to initiate or essentially create these different product level sources restrictions. So I'm going to go ahead and have mine's already checked, so that's good. Hit OK. Because that setting is under Tools Options, you may have to close QuoteWerks and then restart it for the changes to take effect. So anytime you make a change under Options, I would recommend just closing QuoteWerks and relaunching it, and then you should be able to make those adjustments. So now that we've enabled that security, we want to go ahead and apply it to one of our databases in QuoteWerks. To do that, we're going to click on Products, Set up Product Sources, and then we're going to select the database we want to make a change to. Now, if you have a native product database in QuoteWerks, that means the database that you imported your products into, or you set up manually, where you just manually created all your items, you're going to have a lot more options. If you're linking to an existing database, such as if you're using Autotask or ConnectWise or Salesforce or QuickBooks or Sage 50 to get your products from, you'll only have access to basically show or hide it for specific users. So I'll show you the differences here in just a moment. So to apply these settings, we're going to click on the product source, then click Edit, and then you'll see here it's already set to QuoteWerks, and then we're going to hit Next, Next. We don't need to change that. And then here you see it's going to be a new step. It's going to be this Product Data Source Wizard, and then it's going to be the Security step. So this is where you can actually choose the level of access for each user or the group to this specific database. So you can actually choose who has the option to view, modify, or view the database, create items in the database, modify the items in the database, or delete items in the database. So this is where you can actually specify that. So I can choose, right now my user has access to view, create, modify, and delete. If Jen wanted to be able to view and I wanted her to be able to create products, but I didn't want her to be able to change them or delete them, then these would be the checkboxes that I would set for her. So in this case, she'd be able to view this product source and she'd be able to create new products, but she wouldn't be able to modify or delete it. Same thing with John. If John's really new and I just want him to be able to view the products but not make any changes yet until he gets a little more comfortable, I can set it as view, and then he'll be able to view and pull items and search items from that database. He just wouldn't be able to add any new items or edit the items or delete any items in that specific database. Again, you can also do it by groups. So if you want your inside sales team just to be able to view and create, or view, create, and modify, you'll be able to make those adjustments here. Obviously, if you hide it, so if you try to just set the create or just the modify, it's automatically going to put view, because if you don't let them view it, they obviously can't see it, and they obviously can't make changes to it. And then to apply those settings, you're simply going to finish the setup, and then those settings will be set for you. So it's very simple to make those changes, very easy. If you're linking to a database, so like I said, if you're using Autotask or ConnectWise or Salesforce or QuickBooks or Sage 50, or even just like an Excel database or Access database that you're linking to, you actually won't have the option to create, modify, or delete. It'll basically be just view. That's because when you're linking to a database, we don't make changes to the database. It's just a read-only database essentially. So here you can choose whether or not a user has, or a user group has access to be able to view that specific database in QuoteWerks. All right. So those are just some of the security settings that you can set based on access rights. One of the other things that's also common is being able to set specific like document items columns as well as product source columns. So I'll show you how you can change those as well, because it's a little different, but it kind of falls in the same thing about security settings. So on your product sources window here, so in your product lookup window, a lot of times you have columns that maybe you don't want specific users to see, specifically cost. That's a big one that we hear a lot, is where you don't want your sales reps to see the cost of the item. You just want them to see the selling price and the MSRP. But you need the cost for all of your reporting and your margins and all that information, but you don't want your individual users to see that. So in your product lookup menu, if you select your database, you'll see there's two options here. One is going to auto-size the columns. The other one is going to let you customize the columns. So if you click on the Customize Columns button here, you can actually choose which columns this user can see. So right now I'm logged in as myself. So these are the selected columns I can see. But if I didn't want to show cost, I could highlight cost and choose Remove. And then you can see here now it shows up here. Now I wouldn't see it. And then I can actually apply that setting to multiple users. So that Apply To tab is going to be here as well. So I can actually choose if I want to apply it to all users. I don't want anyone to see cost in this case. Or maybe I only want to apply it to my internal sales reps. So I only want to apply it to Brandon, to Jen, and to John here. So this is an easy way to kind of modify your security settings in another format. You know, maybe you're not restricting that they can change costs. You just don't want them to even be able to see it. This is how you would do that in QuoteWerks. So I'm going to go back real quick here. So we would click on Products to bring up our product lookup menu. You select your product database, and then over here on the right, you'll see this is going to be, if you hold your mouse over it long enough, it'll pop up with a tooltip that'll say Customize Columns. And when you click on that, that will let you choose the columns that are available to this specific user, and then you can choose who you want to apply them to. So if I wanted to apply them to all, I could select all. If I only want to apply them to Jen and John, I can do that from here as well. And then I can hit OK, and that'll make that change. So that's the first place that you would need to change that in the in your product lookup screen. The second place is going to be on the document item screen. So on the document item screen, even though I've hidden it in the product lookup screen, it's still actually going to show on my document item screen unless I make that change. So you can even see here's my unit cost field here. So I want to hide that field and the extended cost. So to do that, you click on View, Customize Columns, and it's going to work very similar to the last screen we were just on. So you choose the field that you don't want to show, in this case unit cost, and just click on it so there's no check mark next to it. If there's no check mark, that means it's hidden on this screen on the document items, and you can do that for multiple columns as well. So if there's any other fields that you don't want to show, you know, maybe you're just not using them and just want to kind of simplify it for your users, that's an easy way to do that. And then you can see right here there's an Apply To tab, and you can choose which users you want to apply that change to. So using all those security settings together, that will give you a really easy way to kind of apply to multiple users and kind of limit what your users can get into. A lot of you use our implementation service or you set up yourself. It takes time. You don't want your users having access to things that they don't need access to or that they shouldn't have access to. So you can use all these kind of settings to really pare down and really limit what users have access to, and you can specifically make sure they're only seeing what they're supposed to see and what they're not supposed to see. So I appreciate everybody's time today. I'm going to go ahead and go through the questions now. So if you haven't posted a question, go ahead and start sending them over. Again, we're going to post this recording on the website. We'll send out an email blast as well. So right now I'm going to go through all your questions. And again, I thank everyone for showing up today. All right, Jeff, I see your question here. Jeff asked, he has Microsoft access to modify his products. And then if he needs to add this alphanumeric column when you export the file to QuoteWerks, you don't have to. It's really up to you. If you want that field in QuoteWorks in your product lookup screen, then you can go ahead and map it. If not, you can leave it unmapped. If it's kind of like the part number field, that is a field that we require in QuoteWorks, but if it's not the part number, if it's just something that you use to kind of denote a specific part, or if there's a specific reason that you have it in there, you can choose whether or not it shows up in the software or not. That'll be up to you. Gene, I see your suggestion about basically disabling specific products. Yeah, we don't have that functionality. It's a good suggestion. It's something I can bring up for you. One thing you may want to look at is you can actually set a product database as disabled. So if you go into your product sources, so edit product sources, and then you edit a product database, if you go all the way to the end, there's actually a checkbox that says disable product data source. And what that'll do is basically hides it from showing up in your product lookup screen. So it doesn't show up here anymore. So that might be an option where you create a product data source, maybe you call them like retired products or something like that, and then you basically copy over the retired or the old products into this data source. That way you still have like you said, the legacy history information, but they don't show up in the search when your users are using QuoteWorks. So that might be kind of like a workaround for you. Lawrence asked, it'd be great if you could turn off the ability to convert to close. I mean, Lawrence, technically you could. Under your user maintenance, if you edit a user and you go to the menus tab and you go into the file, basically the way we consider a quote closed is we convert it to an order. So if you uncheck that, convert to order and convert to invoice, that would essentially leave the quote open permanently. You wouldn't be able to convert it to one or to close or whatever. And then if you're worried about the user going into the sale info tab, because that's actually where you would you can manually change the doc status. There's a security setting for not being able to change the doc status as well. So those 3 settings right there would basically do what you need it to do. All right. Oh, Steve has a really good question. Steve asked, can a user be cloned? Yes, Steve, a user can be cloned, and we actually do recommend that when you're setting up new users in QuoteWorks, go ahead and set up kind of like your prototypical user, and then go ahead and clone them. And when you clone them, they're going to have all the same security settings as that cloned user. And then you can create their username, their password, and then you can make any minor modifications if you need to. The Apply To tab will obviously work well if you're making changes across all of them, but if you're making, if you're brand new to QuoteWorks and you're setting up new users, you can absolutely clone them just by clicking on the clone button under that user maintenance window. Diane, that's a good question. Diana asked if you can restrict the commission view between sales reps. Yes, but only if, as long as, basically if a user doesn't have access to view another user's quotes, they'll never be able to see their commission, because this is really the only place we show commission is here, and then also in the management reports, but your users probably wouldn't have access to the management reports anyway. So that would be done automatically. So basically, if they don't share documents, then, or if they can't view another user's documents, they wouldn't be able to see the commission for that user. Adam, I see your question here, so I'm just reading it. Just give me a moment. Okay, so Adam asked if are users used to just deal with documents, or can they be used for security and access and menus? Yes, they can be used for basically everything. So if you go back to your user maintenance here and we edit the user, that's what this Apply To tab is useful for, is that if you make a change to a specific user, so let's say I made a change to my user here, and I changed some of my security settings on that Access tab, and I wanted to apply those settings to everyone in my group, I would click on Select User Group, and then in this case it would be inside Sales, and I would hit OK. And then it would basically say, hey, we're going to copy these settings from the Access tab to all the users in this group. Are you sure you want to continue? To yes. Yes, and then it'll tell you that it copied those settings over. So yeah, so that's another way that the groups can be very useful. You're absolutely right that they do have the document settings as well. They're useful there, but they're also useful for anything on your other tabs as well, specifically the menu and the access tabs also. Robin, there's not a way to have a document that auto-populates line items automatically, but what you can do is create document templates in QuoteWerks. So maybe you have specific products or services that you offer, and you want your users to always start off with that, kind of like that base quote, and then they can make changes based on the customer's request. You can absolutely do that. If you want to create a document template, essentially what you do is you build a quote. So if we build our quote here, if we select a couple items, I'm just going to select these first three here. So maybe this is what I want my template to start off with, because these are the 3 items we always quote out. We would just simply click File, Save as Template. So under your File menu, to Save as Template. And then you would give your template a name. So in this case, we'll call it our Security Setting Template, and hit OK. And then to use this template, we'll click on File, New. And then it's going to bring up this screen, and you want to click on your Template tab, and then you would select from your existing templates. So there's not a way to, like when a user logs in, for it to automatically start with that template, but you can have it where that you basically just tell them, hey, when you log into QuoteWerks, click on File, New, and you start with this template, and you give them that template name, and that would be the best option. And so there's my security setting template, and you can see I can hit OK, and then it opens up this template, and then I can make any changes or modifications from there. And yes, and Robin, yes, you can apply like subtotals and heading lines. You basically build out a quote the way you want it to look, and then you just do File, Save as Template, and then it already has all that information pre-populated for them when they use that template. Gene, to copy items from one database to another, what you'll have to do is, the easiest way is you can just go to your product list, and you'll basically have to undisable that product source. But you can just right-click on an item and do Copy, and then you can go to another database, and then you just do Append Paste, and it'll copy it over there, and then you can go remove it, and then you can basically disable that other database once you've done that. So it's basically just copying and pasting between the 2 databases in your product lookup screen here. Lawrence, when you say it's closed, so I guess I might be confused here. So I might need a little more information on, because you're saying it's closed on your end means that it was exported already into QuickBooks. So when we export to QuickBooks, you can actually choose which document status the document uses. I don't have QuickBooks set up on here, so I can't show you within the settings, but if you go to your QuickBooks settings, and so if you click on the QuickBooks icon and you click up on Setup on the bottom left hand, there's going to be a tab that says QuoteWerks, and if you click on that, that selects which status documents are set at once they've been sent over to QuickBooks. I think the default is exported, but if you want to call it closed or something else, you could do that. Josh, for your question, go ahead and contact tech support. I'm not familiar with that issue. You shouldn't have to remove it. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I would contact tech support. I've never heard of that before. So there may be something I'm just not aware of, or it may be something that support can address for you. Gina, if you want all users to view all documents and you're going to use QuoteWerks to track commission, there's not a way to hide it here. And part of the reason is because if a user, yeah, there's not really a good way to do that, unfortunately. You could actually hide this total for all items box if you're not using this, if you don't care about this information, but that would really be the only way. Support might have another option for you, maybe like an I&I setting where they can hide a specific field, but I think it's basically you can either turn this box on or off for your users, and then they wouldn't have access to see the commission. The other option would be not to track commissions in QuoteWerks, basically set your commission to 0 in QuoteWerks and then use another program or run like a management report that would actually calculate the commission for your reps instead of it being displayed here. Gene, that might be, or actually, Gene, if your database is not a native database, then it may not show up. Then it won't show up actually. If it is, then yeah, you may just need to update for that functionality. Okay, Lawrence, I see what you're saying. Yeah, if the issue is that your users are changing the status to the wrong setting, then yeah, you could actually lock down under the users. You could actually lock down so they can't manually modify the document status field. Right here. So there's a checkbox that says cannot modify doc status when converting document. So basically you can set the default document status to whatever you want to call it, 1 or closed or whatever. And then with that set, when they convert a quote to an order in QuoteWerks to like close it, they wouldn't be able to change the status or select the wrong status. It would be whatever the default is set up in QuoteWerks. All right. I think I got through everyone's questions. I'll hang around a few more minutes so you guys can post any additional questions you might have. If not, again, thanks everyone for your time today, and I hope you guys have a great day.